All right, so we're going deep this time with a case that honestly makes you wonder about people, like what pushes someone over the edge. It's a double murder, but not a typical, crime of passion situation.
Yeah, it's definitely attention grabbing right from the start. Just the level of violence, the weapon used, a sickle. It's like something out of a horror movie almost.
And it all happened in Pethanamthitta District, Kerala, which makes you think about the context a little. Does culture play a role here, or is it purely individual?
It's tempting to look for those external factors, to try to explain it away as something specific to a place or culture. But ultimately, it always comes down to the individuals involved, their choices, their psychology.
Right, and in this case, the supposed trigger was a WhatsApp message. Can you believe that a single message could lead to something so horrific?
It's almost impossible to wrap your head around, isn't it? Like, how can a few words on a screen have that kind of power? It really makes you think about the context, what was going on beneath the surface, that a simple message could ignite such a reaction.
Well, the reports say the husband Baiju suspected his wife Vaishna of having an affair with their neighbor Vishnu.
Ah, so infidelity, that classic motive.
Yeah, but here's the thing. No one else seemed to notice any signs of an affair. In fact, Baiju and Vishnu were actually friends and worked together in the timber industry.
Really? So the affair might not even be real. That adds a whole other layer to this. Does it? Was this just paranoia on Baiju's part, or is there something we're missing?
It's like he built this whole narrative in his head and then reacted to that rather than reality.
Hmm.
And the fact that he didn't even try to run away after the murders, that's strange, right?
Very strange. If it was truly a crime of passion, you'd expect some kind of flight response or remorse. But staying at the scene almost suggests a sense of acceptance or even justification for his actions.
So not just anger or jealousy then, but a belief that he was in the right, a twisted sense of righteousness.
Exactly. It's a chilling thought, right? That someone could commit such a brutal act and believe they were justified. It shows how powerful and dangerous our emotions can be, especially when left unchecked.
And in this case, it wasn't just jealousy fueling the fire. There were also reports of financial strain on the family. Vaishna had taken out a loan, and it seems like there was some secrecy surrounding it, leading to arguments between her and Bayu.
Ah, yes. Money problems. Those can certainly add fuel to the fire. Money has a way of amplifying existing tensions in a relationship. It's rarely ever just one thing. It's a complex mix of stressors that build up over time.
So we're dealing with a perfect storm here, aren't we? Individual choices, inner demons, and external pressures all colliding in this horrific act. And in the middle of it all are the children. Can you imagine the trauma of waking up to that scene, losing both parents in such a way?
It's heartbreaking to think about. Those children became victims too, even though they weren't physically harmed. The emotional scars of that night will likely stay with them forever.
It really makes you question how someone could do that to their own family.
Yeah.
It speaks to a level of detachment that's hard to comprehend. Like he was so consumed by his own rage and perceived injustice that he completely disregarded the impact on his children. It's a tragic reminder of the ripple effects of violence, the unintended victims left to pick up the pieces. It really makes you think about their future. How do you even begin to process something like that at such a young age?
And the weapon itself, the sickle, I mean, that's not something you see every day in a crime like this.
No, it's not. The choice of weapon can be significant. It can tell us something about the perpetrator's state of mind.
So what does the sickle tell us about Bayou? It's not a gun, it's not a knife. It's something, well, it's almost primitive.
It is primitive, isn't it? It speaks to a level of, I don't know, maybe rage, a desire to inflict pain that goes beyond just killing someone.
You're saying it was personal.
Possibly. I mean, it could also suggest a degree of premeditation, that this wasn't just a spur of the moment decision, but something he had thought about.
But if that's true, why not try to cover his tracks? Why not hide the bodies or come up with an alibi?
That's a good question, and it's what makes this case so puzzling. On one hand, you have this brutal, seemingly premeditated act, and on the other hand, he doesn't even try to escape.
So maybe he wasn't thinking clearly at all, or maybe he just didn't care.
It's possible, or maybe, as we discussed earlier, he truly believed he was in the right, that he was justified in what he did.
That's a scary thought, that someone could be so convinced of their own righteousness
Yeah.
that they commit such a horrific act.
It is scary, and it underscores the importance of addressing our emotions. Not letting them control us. Anger, jealousy, rage, these are powerful forces that can cloud our judgment.
It's like that saying, right? Hurt people hurt people.
Exactly. We all have a responsibility to be aware of our own emotional state and to seek help when we need it. Bottling things up only makes them worse.
And we need to be aware of the warning signs in others too, right?
Wow.
The isolation, the anger, the inability to cope with stress. in healthy ways.
Absolutely. Those are all red flags that shouldn't
Yeah.
be ignored.
Yeah.
We need to create a culture where it's okay to talk about these things, to seek help without shame.
Because at the end of the day, preventing these tragedies is far better than dealing with the aftermath.
And the aftermath in this case is devastating, not just for Baiju himself, but for the two victims, and especially for those children.
It's a stark reminder that violence has a ripple effect. It impacts everyone involved.
And it highlights the need for more support systems, more resources for mental health. We need to equip people with the tools to handle these difficult emotions before they escalate to something like this.
It's crazy to think that it all comes back to that one WhatsApp message that's what supposedly set him off.
It really shows you the power of our own minds, doesn't it? I mean, a trigger like a message, it's not inherently bad or good. It's how we interpret it that matters.
And if you're already in a bad place, mentally suspicious, jealous, angry, then something like that could easily be the final straw.
Exactly. It can confirm all your worst fears, validate your paranoia, and make you act without thinking.
Which makes me wonder, if there had been better communication in that marriage, if they'd been able to talk openly about their problems, maybe things could have turned out different.
Communication is key in any relationship, right? It's about creating a safe space to express your feelings, your doubts, your fears, without that you're just building walls and letting resentment fester.
And it's not just about talking, it's about listening.
Yeah,
Two, really listening, trying to understand the other person's perspective.
that's so important because when we stop listening, when we assume we know what the other person is thinking, that's when misunderstandings and distrust start to take root.
And that's a dangerous path, isn't it? Because once that trust is broken, it's hard to get it back.
It is. And sadly, in this case, that breakdown of communication had tragic consequences.
It's a reminder to all of us to be mindful of how we communicate with our loved ones, to be open and honest and to really listen to each other.
And to recognize when things are getting out of hand, when our emotions are taking over, to seek help when we need it. There's no shame in asking for help.
This has been a tough deep dive,
Yeah.
honestly. It's hard to wrap your head around such a senseless act of violence.
It is, but if there's one thing we can take away from it, it's the importance of communication, of mental health awareness, of seeking help before it's too late.
Because even though this case is extreme, it highlights issues that many people face. Jealousy, anger, financial stress. These are all things that can put a strain on any relationship.
Exactly, and it's up to us to learn from this tragedy, to break the cycle of violence, and to create a world where people feel supported and empowered to seek help.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been heavy, but important. And as always, remember to stay curious, stay informed,